This episode is brought to you by the Flower Edit NZ. Welcome back to the Kiwi Wedding Podcast. My name is Lydia. I am your host and a wedding photographer at Lydia Rachel Photography, based in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland. Guys, it's nearly Christmas, and this is actually our last official episode for 2024. What a year it has been. Many ups and downs, a lot of growth for the podcast. I'm so grateful to each and every one of you that have listened to every episode or even just one. I'm so thankful that you are here. I can't wait for many more conversations in 2025, a few more in-person events, and lots to be excited by. Watch this space. So the podcast will be on pause the next 2 weeks over Christmas and New Year's, if you're listening to this right when it comes out. And I'll be back with a new episode in 2025 on the 7th of January. I might be dropping a little bonus episode during the break, so keep an eye out for that. But I will be active over on socials, so come and chat to me on Instagram. Tell your friends. This is the most popular time of year to get engaged, as I've said before. Christmas, summer holidays, there's going to be some knees dropping. So if you know a friend that's got engaged, I'd be so grateful if you can send them the podcast. I would also absolutely love to hear your feedback about the podcast. Things you loved, things you think we can improve on, any thoughts, ideas, questions. Slide into my DMs over on Instagram. I might pop a question box up there in the next wee while as well. But yeah, if it has at all helped you in your wedding planning journey, I would love to hear about it. We have some really exciting guests coming up in the new year, and I just can't wait to see this wedding season. Every week I'm watching online just beautiful weddings pop up, and yeah, I can't wait to talk to some of you that are getting married this season. So I just want to wish you a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. I hope you spend some quality time with your family and friends. However you celebrate, I hope you get some downtime to relax and refresh for the new year. 2025 couples, you're up next. On this episode, I'm chatting to Kate. Kate is one of the co-founders of Rad Agency. So she's a wedding vendor and they do planning and coordination for events and weddings. Kate's co-founder is an environmental scientist, so they have a real focus on planning in a way that considers the planet and protecting the environment in that process. I loved this chat. We talked about the different services they offer, how they work, tips and ideas of things that you can do to have a planet-friendly wedding, some amazing advice on timeline, choosing a good MC and vendors that you can trust, lots of pearls of wisdom from behind the scenes, and I think you'll get some great ideas from this one. Okay, let's get into it. Lots of love. See you soon. Enjoy episode 76 with Kate. Hi, Kate. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. So excited to chat to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So you're a wedding vendor and done a lot of work in the wedding and event space. To start off with, if you could tell me a bit about you, what your background is, and kind of your journey to what got you to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So my husband and I have been together since we were 15, and we're both, well, I'm overtly romantic. I think he's romantic in I'll bring you cups of teas kind of way. And we met really young and always knew we were going to get married. And honestly, when I was 19, I said, I just want to have a baby or be engaged. I think I felt like more 30, I felt more my age now that when I was 19 than I do now, to be honest. And so we got engaged at 19. He did a wee treasure hunt and I followed that around to find the ring at the end. That was really special. And I had obviously never planned a wedding before, and I was a teacher at the time, and I always had a passion and knew I would want to get into the events industry, but the wedding really triggered that for me. So we planned it over a year. I think I had something like a 13-page run sheet for our own wedding, for everything down to the wire. Like, it was obviously absolutely ridiculous. Those are sitting at like a page or two now, but at the time I really realized that the organization and stuff from teaching translated over. Loved planning our wedding so much. We had the best day and we had 200 people. It was a very big wedding, and it was, yeah, big on logistics, marquee wedding, which obviously always has a lot more vendors and people bringing things in. Well, it did in this case, and we were about an hour out of town. So it really showed me how exciting it was to bring a project together. And after our wedding, some of the guests, because we were so young and we were definitely first, some of our mates and guests started getting engaged. And then they were like, "Oh, so Kate, do you mind telling me what you did and who you used?" And yeah, I got chatting, and the first paid wedding I did was actually a friend. I think I charged $200, and that includes like being there on the day. They flew me up, though. It was in Whanganui. It was very exciting, and doing all the planning for them, which obviously $200. I know how to value that better now, but at the time it was just such an honor and like such a privilege to be part of someone's special day, and being an expert, having done it before, compared to them starting fresh. So it started from there, and then I got heaps of friends asking. I think I've done 31 weddings now, and then I used to work for an events company, which gave me a lot of opportunity because they hired out the equipment to do wedding planning there. Yeah, and it's just a bit of a passion of mine. It's very different to planning an event. It's much more personal, and I find it is, like, financially, to be honest, planning a wedding versus planning an event, from a planner perspective, it's usually better financially to plan an event and more low maintenance. But I think you just kind of can't give up that passion for it.
Something special about weddings just
Yeah.
grips you. I know the thing.
Yeah, giving up your Saturdays, giving up your Fridays.
I
It's
know.
but it's just so special. Like, there's no other event that I would work 14 hours at.
So, can you tell us a bit about Rad Agency? What types of services do you offer? And yeah, I thought maybe we could have a chat through. I know a lot of people get confused about the kind of differences between a planner, a stylist, coordinator, and yeah, what kind of person needs each of those. So, yeah, a
Yeah,
few
absolutely.
questions in there.
So Rad was born about a year and a half ago. I had a really a bit of a crazy week. I actually left my job on the Thursday, and I coordinated Millie's wedding, who's now my co-founder, on the Friday, and my dad passed away on the Saturday, and I won a scholarship from Brianne West, who is very big in the sustainability space, on the Sunday. So big week, big week. And Rad is named after my dad. So he was Stu Radcliffe. So obviously used the part of his last name, and it just went really well for marketing and stuff. And I used to get called Kate Rad because there were about 4 other Kates in my class. So it was nice to bring it back. A bit cringe at first, but I've learned to roll with it now. And Millie, whose wedding I did on the Friday, she's an environmental scientist. And so her focus during the whole wedding planning process was on sustainability. She put the planet first in so many of her decisions. And I'd never worked with a bride who had considered that, firstly, and it made me realize how much I don't typically consider that. I'm very new to the sustainability space, so people always talk to me about the experience that their guests are going to have and that they're going to have in their family. They always talk to me about their budgets, but they never said to me, "Oh, what impact will my one-off wedding have on the planet?" But Millie really rated that. And so that week, it was just amazing to see that all come together. And I'm sure we'll talk about those later, the decisions she made there. And because I won the scholarship, I had to do something, and I wanted to do something that benefited the world, environmentally. And so I kind of asked Millie, put her name on the application, and said, maybe we look at sustainable events, because no one is really overtly doing that. I feel like definitely some event planners, to receive funding or to impress like the corporate space, whether it's genuine or not, they are saying that they're planning their events sustainably. And also, I think there's just a really big gap of why would an event planner necessarily have that environmental scientist knowledge? So we decided to put that together to create RAD, and it has been, yeah, really successful. We do a lot of corporate work, but it is actually amazing how many people do care about it for their wedding, because I think their day job, might have those values, or the younger generation who are looking to be more sustainable and more planet friendly in everything they do, that transfers nicely into their big day. And what was your next question?
Yeah, no, I'll say quickly that's such a unique and cool combo. Like, yeah, I wish it was more of a thing, but that's so important. And yeah, I think it's a huge space that kind of gets forgotten about sometimes. We hear a lot about yeah, different, I don't know, recycling or like the fashion industry or all these terrible things that are going on, but not everyone thinks about it when they're just planning this one-off event. So cool. And yeah, we'll definitely get into chatting more about that. The other thing was just the difference between like a stylist, coordinator, planner, and yeah, what kind of services you guys offer.
Yeah, definitely. So we're really fortunate in Christchurch. I feel like we have quite a few wedding planners, whether they're independent or part of companies, and some of them are also stylists, which is cool. Or they might have someone in their business that's also a stylist. Personally, we don't, like, I would never claim to be a stylist. So a stylist, in my eyes, is very much like the interior designer for your house. They're the person who are going to make sure everything's cohesive and pull the look together. And there is a bit of overlap. Like, of course, there is, if they say we're going to have these chairs or we're going to have these products at the wedding, then as a planner, you need to consider that and why they've put those elements together. But a planner is very much the logistics, the communications. Yeah, if you were going to put it in another job title, the stylist would be like the interior designing and the marketing of your wedding. And then the planner is the logistics and thinking about like the customer, thinking about the guest of your wedding, in my eyes. The coordinator on the day is hugely customer focused. I mean, you're there, you're kind of like the PA, you're the bride's, sidekick, you're the groom's sidekick, you're making sure that the family aren't, too involved picking up too many jobs. I guess I see myself on the day as very much, here's the run sheet, follow along. The planners, whether it's me or not, has created a fabulous run sheet. Obviously, you're going to make sure everything sticks to time, but you're also looking around constantly and seeing what else you can do to elevate the experience. Yeah, stylist for the beautiful, the practical, the planner for the logistics, recording it, communicating with vendors, and then the coordinator for making sure it runs as it was supposed to on the day.
Yeah, nice for people to have that sort of explainer. And yeah, some people just do one or two of those services or all of them. So yeah, I guess it's all kind of custom, depends on the client.
Absolutely. I never really get booked. It's not often, there's been a couple of times, but it's not often I get booked as a planner without the coordination. I feel like people are typically all in on we want support start to finish, or they might just do a consult, like a one off consult, but it would be very rare that I did the full planning process over like 8 months or a year and then didn't coordinate it. However, from the sustainable angle, Millie, who's the environmental scientist, she can definitely suggest and advise on considerations for the stylist to take into account. So it's things like merging your vendors, so you have less people arriving, like you're getting furniture all from one place. We love hiring, obviously, because hiring from a stylist who has a hire company means you're doing that all with them, and that furniture's not DIY and purchased, it's going to be reused by other couples. I mean, it has a fix here or there on a couch, but that couch is going to be used 100 times, so that's, from a sustainable angle, that's brilliant. And there are places like the little hire company that just do that so well. And then it's really key as well to admit what you're not. So like, I'm not a stylist, but I'm happy to, Millie can advise on what florals are in season and what's best there, but we will never put our hand up and say that we're going to style your wedding. I don't think you need to be a unicorn. You don't have to do all of the things. That's why you find great partners and collaborate.
Yeah, absolutely. Such an important role that you do. And as a wedding vendor, I really appreciate it when people have a planner, and especially on the day coordinator as well. Just makes things run so much smoother, having that point person, and yeah, not having to annoy the bride or the bridal party or family with those little questions and things like that. So helpful.
Yeah, that's true actually. I spoke, about being the PA to the bride or to the family, but you're there for all the vendors. Like, one of my favorite things was all the vendors were hungry at a wedding, and I just drove off and grabbed some cheeseburgers. It was such a minor thing, but I think making sure your vendors are like fed and watered and know when their time to like have dinner and their time to have a break is coming up is super important to me, because I can't even imagine carrying those cameras around all day and what the videographers and what you guys do. Like, yeah, it's just incredible. So it's nice to value that both ways. And actually, that's the most fun at a wedding for me, being a coordinator. I love like sitting back with the group of vendors and yeah, having dinner, having a laugh. And when you have a good group, it really makes it like a fun day on the job, that's for sure.
Yeah, I love that. We so appreciate it. And yeah, often a lot of us are like working for ourselves. So it's like your
Mm,
colleagues on the day, team doing it together. So much fun. And I think people want to have this really like relaxed experience and
mm,
be so chill. But I feel like if you want that kind of chill vibe, then being super organized, everything
mm.
will just like flow and then you'll get that. So, yeah, don't skip out on the admin and organization part of it.
Yeah, I had an intern come along to a couple of weddings, and they said, "Oh, this is like there's not much to do." And I had to explain that that's when a planner has done their job right. Like there wasn't much to
It's a
do.
good thing.
We could very much sit back and really enjoy watching like the couple and everything bring to life. You chill, and then you might do a flip, and then you might prepare for the reception, and you might tidy up this and tidy up that. But there's a lot of downtime, and I said to them, I said, look, that actually means we've done a really good job leading up to it, because you would know, I've only had one wedding that I didn't enjoy, and it was when like the family was trying to overstep, and I felt that pressure, and then also I think if you weren't like if a vendor didn't show up or something, like you could feel it. Do you know what I mean? The ones where you're doing nothing, where you feel bored in the best possible way, that's a good wedding. It means everyone's stress free.
Yeah, I think that's such a key thing, just booking vendors that you trust as well. So, yeah, you're not having those people kind of like questioning or looking over you so much. Like, you should book someone that you just trust. They're going to have everything under control. And yeah, I think couples maybe do, but maybe communicating that to their families as well sometimes, just like, we've got Kate, she's amazing, she's looking after all of this, so don't worry, leave them to it.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of a planner is that we will only book vendors we know will show up and do an amazing job. The only times I've heard negative stories on like the wedding Facebook pages and everything is when it's clients, booking, they didn't get a planner, they book people, oh, my photographer didn't show up, or we didn't get the images from them, and then they list the name, and all of us as wedding planners would be like, oh, I haven't heard of them, or do you know what I mean? You're cutting out so much time from hiring a planner. You're cutting out so much stress, and it's also the ownership's on us. That person doesn't show up, we booked them, so it's our responsibility to like find the cover. And it's not an issue for the people who don't have the money to invest, which is totally fine for the whole thing. I would still say do a consult about your vendors and about your day. Finances always come first, then experience, then sustainability is obviously definitely in third place there. But if you can just have one meeting with a planner and work out all of your vendors even, then you just know that trust is there, because usually it's not an issue until on the day it's a big issue if you haven't done that in advance.
Such great advice. I've talked a little bit about it already, but can you walk us through a bit of the process, what that looks like when somebody inquires with you, books you right through up to their wedding day and beyond?
Yeah, sure. So most of my leads, to be honest, come from word of mouth, which is lovely. I don't push the wedding services, and in general, I'm just not very good at socials or marketing. From that perspective, I do prefer word of mouth. And we'll get an inquiry. We would first meet with them over coffee or Teams, and just make that a no pressure little chat and see what that looks like. Big believer of putting a quote out there with no surprises. So it's first working out what do you actually want. Sometimes people say they want something, but then after you talk to them for 15 minutes, they're like, oh my gosh, actually, you're right. I didn't even know we had to book the venue now this far in advance or something. And then you're like, hey, actually, let's chuck in some planning consults. So we have a bit of like a discovery, work out what you need, quote it. They can add things, take away things. There's absolutely no pressure. I'll generally quote planning and coordination, and quite often they just pick up the whole package. Otherwise, they'll come back, and if they say, oh, my budget's this, then it's like, okay, perfect. Let's do a consult every 3 months. We'll be together for an hour or two on that day, and we will go through everything. So I have a top to toe like schedule and list of from 12 months out until the big day, like what you need to have planned. But we'll go through it. And as we're going through those checklists, there are a lot of checklists online, obviously, that people use in lieu of a planner, but you miss so much of like the nuance. You don't get the little bits of wisdom, the little tidbits that you just naturally get while you're talking. And it's obviously very bespoke and personalized to your wedding. So we'll go through that whole list. We'll see where they're up to. And yeah, if they need to add more consults on, that's fine. Most of my clients I meet with once a month or every 2 months for the quiet period in the middle. And then we meet a month before run sheet. And I communicate with their vendors from about 2 months out, and then communicate with them leading up on the day, make any final changes, give all the vendors the run sheet, and then on the day, like, I'm all yours from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. at night, whatever that looks like to suit. I feel like you can really do anything, but the most important thing is that you have that sit down together for an hour or two, and you get a high level like overview of the wedding, and then you quote, and then you go into more detail, and that's when you give all of like the secrets and the information away and the helpful tips, because you have to value your knowledge. There were times in the past where people would text me, that I haven't seen for 10 years from high school, and they'd be like, hey, can you tell me a venue to get ready, a venue to host my wedding at for $3,000? Thanks. And it's like, wow, I haven't actually spoken to you for 10 years, so I need to value that. That's like a lawyer charges or an accountant charges. I hold the expertise there. But then you equally want to give a lot of value in that discovery call and show what you can do for them. I'm going to save you so much time, so much admin, and I'm going to hold the responsibility and be your key contact on the day.
Amazing. So cool to hear about that process. And I think, I don't know, there's sometimes this mystery around planners or what they actually do, how they can help. And people are like, oh, I can just do it myself. But no, that's such massive value in that, especially if you're like working full time, like wedding planning can be like another full time job. There's so much that goes into it. So,
Yeah, I think it's about 60 hours. It's something like, usually when we're quoting, it's about 60 hours and then
minimum.
14 hours on the day. So for someone to take that on, if it's a big traditional kind of Kiwi wedding, then that is very very much another full-time job when you're trying to squeeze it into weekends, evenings, meeting people. So what we alleviate there is we alleviate research time for sure, because we get to know you as a couple. Like, okay, this is Lydia, she's getting married to Bob. They seem really like casual, and their celebrant, like they seem funny. So their celebrant will need a bit of humor, and they probably want a female celebrant. So really quickly, you can know their budget, help you find the vendor. Most of the time it's like matchmaking, it's like a perfect fit, and you're like, actually great, because when you go on the celebrant website, all they are is a face and a name, so we can really personalize those matches. That's where we can help. Definitely sticking to a budget. And I also think I like to set homework. It sounds so lame, but it's definitely the teacher in me. But I'll have a meeting with the bride and groom, and I'll set like things for them to do and things for me to do. And the reason that it's both ways, I have had couples in the past actually who asked me to do the whole thing, but typically it's both ways, because I want them to look back and think, yeah, cool, I was really part of that decision making process, and that was all my input that Kate had. So it's just a really long standing relationship, getting to know them and then booking things on their behalf. It's also really good if you don't have a bridal party nearby, or your family maybe is not super supportive and you're having a really stressful day. One of the biggest things I find is they'll say, oh my gosh, my aunties all want to do jobs for the wedding and they want to know how they can help. And my bridal party is out of town and no one's planned my hen's party. And you can just be a friend. You can just pick up that stress. You're a text or you're a call away, and you can just talk them through it. And you're like, you kind of get to be the bad guy. Like, there's been so many times where I'll say, hey, you let them know that they can do a reading, and they can do a speech, where they can bake a cake, but they can't do all of the styling on the day. So they've got a job, but it's not too intense, right? And then I'll say, oh, just blame me, just blame your wedding planner. Like, you get to be a bit of a third party. And so I imagine, and I have had feedback that the bride and groom go, oh, it was so good. I just told, Aunt Joanne that she could bring a cake instead of doing 10 desserts. And I said, oh, my wedding planner said that's all you can do. And I was like, yes, great. I don't mind being the bad guy if it supports the couple.
I love that. You don't always think about that aspect, but it's so handy to have.
Yeah, more indirect, rather than arguing with
Mm,
your family, because weddings well, they do cause arguments, and they just shouldn't. So if you have an in-between mediator,
yes.
yeah, and we're
So
always backing up
good.
the couple anyway.
Yeah, I love that. A message from Anna. Hello, flower friends. The Flower Edit NZ is all about matching your energy and creating florals that you will adore for your special day. You will always receive a bespoke approach, and we are here to make your flower dreams come true. I am offering a 15% off your total order if you mention this ad before the end of Jan 2025. Have a wonderful festive season, and I look forward to flowering for you. Visit the.flowereditnz on Instagram or on the website thefloweredit.nz to get in touch. For the modern romance lovers. Thank you so much to the Flower Edit NZ for supporting this episode of the Kiwi Wedding podcast. Can we talk a bit about the whole environmental side of things? How do you actually plan a planet-friendly wedding or event? And what are a few things that people can consider when they are planning?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, it always comes down to budget first. That's just because realistically, you can't make more money magically work for you. So you have to do what fits inside your budget. and you have to fit with what you want the experience to look like. So you first nut those out. I reckon you get a budget, you get your, your guest list, and when you're working with the planner, you'll talk through what you want the day to look and feel like. And then after that comes a little bit of extra value. There is what can you do? So quite often people come, or like clients will come and say, oh, I need to print a menu for everyone, and I need to print all of this signage. And I'll do a little bit of pushback, and I'll be like, why? Oh, because I went to a wedding and they printed menus for everyone, and they didn't actually, they don't value it, they don't care, and they just get left on the table afterwards. So I said, do you want a menu? Or do you want that signage, or you don't have to do anything. A lot of times people come into wedding planning and they just do what they've always known. Okay, my ceremony's at 3, I'm going to print all this, I'm going to do this. But I like to remind people it's your day, you can do what you like. So a little bit of pushback there. Starting with a planet-friendly wedding is very much question it. Do I need to do it? Because it costs money too, right? Like a lot of people think planning a planet-friendly wedding costs more, when it actually doesn't. Signage. Okay, so let's get rid of the signage you don't want. That's an easy win. Cool, so that's done. Next thing is talking to your vendors and saying, what do you do that is environmentally good? So when you're talking to your florist, what do you do? Oh, I pick in-season flowers. I'm going to use these products, and I'm going to do this, this, and this. And you can think, okay, I'm choosing between vendor A and vendor B, and vendor A has just said what they do environmentally friendly. I'm going to reward them by putting my dollar there and spending, like hiring that vendor. Then the next thing is food. I find food can be a big one. How deep do you want to go? Is it vegetarian, vegan? That's like probably the most extreme level. Is it locally sourced? Is it we're hosting it in a special place that has special seafood that we can get round the corner? Like, are we considering that over flying in some steak or something? It depends how far you want to go. I've never seen someone turn around and do a full vegan wedding just because they felt like being more environmentally friendly, when we know it is. But I have seen people offer options and offer choices that go beyond just the vegans and vegetarians attending getting a little portion of salad. Again, it's sustainability, but it also impacts the people and the experience more so. Food waste. Ask your vendor, what are they going to do with the food afterwards? And make sure they don't make too much, but you also don't want too little. For alcohol, see what bottles or transport. I think just honestly, the main thing is questioning it. If you ask a vendor, if they give you a good answer, reward that vendor over another one, and overtly say to vendor B, hey, I'm going to go with vendor A because they gave me a few more environmentally friendly things they do. Here's what they do, just in case you want to consider it. And that's how I feel like that's how change is going to happen in the industry. If you lose a sale and it's like between 5 and 10 grand because you're finding people, which they will, more and more value that, and there'll probably be regulations later on for events in particular. They're losing money, they're losing business. It's something they can fix. So if they feel the pressure from the audience, they're more inclined to do it.
Yeah, I love that. Some great tips in there, and things for people to think about, definitely.
And definitely hire. I think a lot of people go to DIY and then afterwards they put 100 chair covers and 100 things on Marketplace, and it doesn't sell, and it takes up space in your garage, and it's just a pain in the ass. So realistically, the more you hire, the better. And again, you'll find it's often cost effective. Your bar staff or your alcohol supplier can bring glassware for 60 cents a glass, rather than you buying stuff from Kmart constantly. Because if every couple did that, well, then no one's going to be using the marketplace stuff unless you lose money on it. So financially, it makes sense as well.
Yeah, yeah, such a great tip too. Do you have any other tips around planning for the timeline of the day? Obviously, just book a planner and work with them. It's what you want to do ideally, but yeah, anything about like how to make it more enjoyable for the couple, what they should consider including in their day.
Yeah, so I've got 5 weddings this season. I had a car crash in May, so I'm on a very low, um, you know, less weddings than usual, less events than usual. But my thing that I have told all of them, and 3 out of 5 are doing, just because we caught it at the right time, was actually we're pushing the ceremony forward to 1 o'clock, and I feel like it makes it more enjoyable for a couple of reasons. One, generally from the weddings I've experienced, people do have extra time in the morning. If it means that you hire 2 makeup artists and 2 hairdressers, do you know what I mean? To make that faster for if you have a female involved in that side, to speed those things up in the morning. So you're ready on time, of course. But usually you've got the venue until 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, or if it's a marquee, maybe you have it all night and it's less of an issue. But if that venue closes at 11 or 12, having your ceremony at 3 or 4, you're taking away 2 hours of potential time with your guests. And the day goes so fast. No matter how you plan it, everyone always gives the same feedback. Oh, it went too fast. Oh, it was the best day ever. And if it didn't, then there's obviously something wrong. So what we want to do, and what I'm a big advocate for and trending this season from my perspective, is pushing that forward, whether you do a first look or not, just moving that ceremony forward so you have some extra hangout time in the sun with your friends and family in between. And it also gives a larger time for planners to flip for the reception, which is always helpful if the venue needs it.
Yeah, I love that. Such a good tip. Yeah, sometimes I think people just have no idea about that timeline, or like they're like, when should we have our ceremony? Like people ask me like, when do people normally do it? And they just want to copy everyone else. And I'm like, you can actually do whatever you want. There's no rules. So yeah,
No,
having that extra buffer time in, and just like you've invited all your most special people to one venue that is probably never going to happen again. So spend as much time with them as possible.
absolutely. Yeah. And definitely mixing it up. It's your day. You've got to do what suits you. And a planner will really advocate for that. And if you don't have a planner, then don't just rush into it. Don't copy. Just sit down and have a think. What do you want? Like, what do you value? Do you value time with people? Do you value great food? Those are where your biggest spends and your biggest considerations are going to be based.
Can we talk a bit about pricing? I know it's so hard because it is so bespoke. Every wedding is different. Yeah, can you talk about what sort of people can expect to invest, if there's like a percentage of their budget, or yeah.
Yeah, I think 10%. And the reason I think that is because if someone was to ask me to give a ballpark really quickly, then I would say 10% in a rush. And the reason for that is because uh, when I started, I feel like traditional, I don't know, 80 guest weddings were like $40,000. This is obviously quite a few years ago, and then it started creeping up in the 60s and the in the 80s, and obviously very bespoke. You can go hard on something. You can spend 20 grand on florals if you want to. I've seen all of that before, but I feel like it comes back to the value thing. If you value having a planner, you value their time, you might be working with them for 12 months. Like, this person becomes your friend, your confidant. Like, 10% of your wedding budget in the scheme of things is not that big, but it is an interesting perception, right? Like, you'll pay, say you're having a 60K wedding, you'll pay 6 to 8 grand for videography. And then you might think, oh man, like 4 to 6 grand for wedding planning is a lot. But like I say, you're working with us a long time. It's the whole lead up. So yeah, rough estimate 10%. If it's a small, easy elopement, small, easy wedding, I would do 10% with obviously a minimum value, and making sure that you're valued at between $75 and $150 per hour, depending on how much work is involved. Is it a consult? Is it on the day? I feel like that's a nice range to aim for these days, plus GST, but obviously build that in for the customer.
Yeah, no, that's so helpful for people to hear. And is there any sort of common themes or trends that you've noticed for this upcoming season or couples you're chatting to at the moment? You've mentioned a few things, but yeah, anything you're kind of seeing at the moment?
Yes, I think people are getting, they're kind of mixing up how they do their speeches. I feel like the MC has a bit more of a role there, right? Like speeches used to be this dad will talk, their partners will stand there and then we'll say a little thank you. Now it's really in depth and it's like we're going to bring a friend in, we're going to bring in this person, we're going to bring in this person. I'm seeing more speeches, that's for sure, but shorter duration. And I feel like the MC really does have their work cut out for them, like because they're pushing that along. I find that MCs feeling the pressure to be funny, I am finding a trend that people are picking maybe not an MC they traditionally know, and they're actually hiring an expert in this space. When I started, it was very much get your friend who's a little bit funny and a little bit confident and did really well at their speeches at school to be the MC. And now it's like, oh, do you think my celebrant would do it? And I'm not sure why that's changed, but I feel like if people are recognizing that there's an expert in every area, then an MC is something that they are investing in more. And smaller weddings, post COVID, I am finding smaller weddings with shorter turnaround times, lots of last minute bookings. It's probably a sign of the times, like recession wise, but smaller weddings obviously generally incur less costs. So I feel like people are really budget focused and doing more intimate weddings with, and then hiring experts to pull it together.
Yeah, a lot of people saying that across the board. A lot of vendors I'm chatting to, and yeah, it's a sign of our times. I love what you said as well, that MC such an important role, especially yeah, as a wedding vendor again. And I've talked about this before, but yeah, you can have the like amazing, funny, charismatic person, but they've got no like time management organization skills, which is such a big part of it as well. Like to keep everything on time. And it's not just about like how many hours you booked your vendors for, it's like food's been cooked at a certain time. And yeah, all the things kind of have to flow. So, such an important one.
If you don't have a coordinator, then so much more falls on that MC. I always think to myself, if you're a couple and you don't have a planner, you rely on the venue a lot. Do you have this? Do you have these plugs? Do you have these bits of furniture? Blah blah blah. You are doing a lot more back and forth with the venue if you don't have a planner. But on the day, if you don't have a coordinator, you are heavily relying on your celebrant and your MC, because say after the ceremony and something's been forgotten and you're in this awkward middle period, you don't have a planner, but you don't really want to ask your family, the first people you're going to turn to for help, no matter what the thing is, you run out of alcohol, like, during the evening, whatever, the first person you're probably going to ask, or if your guests have an issue, are going to ask, are you an MC or your celebrant? So the coordinator also alleviates stress there. Like if you want to use your mate who's an MC, that's fine, but that doesn't magically make them a wedding planner and coordinator. So yeah, or if you're hiring an MC and hiring a celebrant, you could set the expectation and say, we don't have a coordinator, so your roles on the day, like I love for you guys to meet by email beforehand. Here's the run sheet. I've made it as the, bride myself. And can you please help me with this part? Can you help me with this part? And just making sure that that responsibility is communicated, because celebrants at every wedding, I'm sure, have a very different expectation of what they're looking after. Some call photos, some don't. Some are there for very short ceremonies. Some more traditional ones might go for hours. So just making sure they know if they're expected to feed into some coordinated duties, or if you have a coordinator, can really take the pressure off them.
Yeah, such important parts of the day, and yeah, made so much easier having a planner or coordinator. There's definitely been weddings I've been photographing, and it's, just Uncle Bob emceeing, and you kind of end up managing them. Like, okay, you need to get up and call the next speech, or the caterers are telling them to hurry up or whatever. So yeah, just taking any of that away is so important. Going back to what you said about speeches as well, so interesting that that's changing, and I've seen a little bit more of people who have in the past broken them up like in between courses of the dinner or whatever, but even breaking them up more throughout the day, like they're having some drinks after the ceremony, or their cocktail hour, doing a few then a few later, so it's not just like this big chunk of like sitting down and listening for an hour.
No one wants to sit and listen. Like, the only people that want to sit and listen for the hour are the bride and groom. They would be like, "Oh my gosh, these guys just spoke about me for an hour. Like, that's so meaningful. That's so deep." Whereas the guests are sitting there like, "I wonder when dinner is. I'm starving. There's no timeline." Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I think we've
Yeah,
all been there as well, and it's very easy. It's very easy when you're planning a wedding to forget what it's like to be a guest at a wedding. And then after you've been married, every time you go to a wedding, you're comparing it to how yours was, right? Like, yeah, it's an interesting psychological thing.
have you had any like career highlight weddings, or yeah, can you tell us about one you've been a part of, and yeah, what made it so amazing?
Yes, I coordinated and helped plan a wedding at the Christchurch Town Hall. And because it was post COVID and there were no shows on, it is the first and last time a wedding will be done in the centre of the Christchurch Town Hall. Because typically that space isn't for hire. You can usually have the conference rooms, the meeting rooms. You can get photos outside with the waterfall. But it was amazing. The couple were lovely. The styling, that was very much her forte. She was a very creative person, and her styling was beautiful. She took care of all of that, and then I got to really sit with the logistics. And I think just having such a unique venue, I'd done a lot of marquee weddings, so it was so incredible to have a unique space and really special, knowing that no one else, like, we couldn't even release the photos because they didn't want to accidentally market it as a venue, because they'd be constantly disappointing people. And just coming down the huge stairs from the theatre, and knowing that that's the only couple that's going to be able to do that.
Sounds incredible. Love that.
Anything unique, right? Because we see 100, and as you know, and couples see one or maybe two, but one mostly. And I feel like as a vendor, anything special or different is like a real novelty.
Yeah, absolutely. So good. You've given us so much amazing advice today. Is there any kind of key takeaway or, yeah, advice that you would give to a friend that's planning their wedding at the moment?
Just make it your day. Don't overcomplicate it. Sit down with your partner, the person you love, remember why you're doing it, and what do you value. Pick your top three things, put your money into it, consider the environment. Sure, if that really resonates with you, but finding your top three values as a couple is number one.
Love that. Amazing advice. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been so lovely to chat.
Thank you.